Dr. James Xavier, a physician and driven researcher, aspires to pioneer a groundbreaking advancement in medicine destined to save numerous lives. In the opening scene, he undergoes an eye examination at the clinic of his colleague, Dr. Sam. The frequency of Xavier's visits, just 3 months since his last checkup, strikes Sam as unusual. Xavier explains that he is on the brink of testing an experimental eye drop on himself, hence the need for frequent examinations. Despite James' credentials and extensive experience, Dr. Sam holds reservations about the idea of subjecting oneself to experimentation. He cautions against it, emphasizing that the human eye perceives only a fraction, up to 10% of the world's realities. James, however, is driven by a vision to transcend these limitations. His goal is to develop an eye drop enabling individuals to perceive beyond the constraints of human vision, reaching into the realms of ultraviolet and X-ray wavelengths and beyond. Though deemed absurd by some, James remains resolute in his ambition to realize this vision. Following the meeting, James retreats to his laboratory, where he encounters his trusted friend and colleague, Dr. Diane. She delivers unsettling news. The backers of their lab are growing impatient. Having invested substantial resources into James' experiment, they are now exerting pressure on Dr. Diane to deliver tangible results. Frustration grips Dr. Diane as she realizes James has kept her in the dark about his study. Acknowledging her concerns, James agrees to unveil his discovery, leading her to the laboratory. There, he elucidates the functionality of the eye drop before administering it to a monkey. To test its efficacy, the primate undergoes a color assessment, despite being unable to see the hues from its own perspective. Remarkably, the monkey accurately discerns the sequence of colored sheets, demonstrating its newfound ability to perceive beyond normal visual limitations. Dr. Diane is awestruck by the animal's heightened intelligence, yet her astonishment is short-lived as the monkey succumbs to cardiac arrest moments later. Although the loss is poignant, it does not diminish the eye drop's transformative potential. James envisions its application in medicine, allowing doctors to diagnose patients simply by observing them. However, further research hinges on securing funds from investors. Recognizing the urgency, Dr. Diane arranges a meeting between James and the investors in the coming days. Driven by an unwavering determination to prove the efficacy of his invention, James resolves to test it on himself. Despite Dr. Sam's vehement opposition, citing the peril of risking his life, James persuades Sam to assist in the application process. In the ensuing scene, Dr. Sam administers the eye drop into James' eyes. Initially, James's vision is distorted, engulfed in a kaleidoscope of colors and patterns, an experience he describes as an unprecedented flood of light. However, his excitement mounts as he realizes he can now see through the stacks of paper on the table, reading them without flipping them over. While thrilled by the success of his product, James laments that he can only perceive the surface of objects. However, his eagerness overtakes caution, prompting him to apply 2 more drops. Instantly, regret washes over him as the burning sensation of the second drop eclipses the discomfort of the first. In the subsequent scene, Dr. Diane and Dr. Sam find themselves in a crucial meeting with the investors. James was unable to attend the meeting due to his ongoing recovery from the eye injury. Unfortunately, the investors have lost faith in his work and decide to withdraw funding from the project. Dr. Diane and Dr. Sam visit James to deliver the disheartening news. Despite having bandages over his eyes to alleviate the pain, James finds himself able to see remarkably clearly through them, almost as if they were non-existent. A week later, James returns to the hospital, where a nurse introduces him to a young girl diagnosed with stenosis. Utilizing his newfound ability, James discerns that the diagnosis is erroneous, discovering instead that the girl harbors a tumor attached to her heart. Despite his efforts to alert the girl's primary doctor, pride blinds the man to James's insights. That evening, Dr. Diane takes James to a party, though such social gatherings aren't typically his preference. Attempting to engage with others, James finds himself dancing with a beautiful woman when suddenly his eyes begin to itch. Upon opening them, he realizes he can now see through people's clothing. In shock, James witnesses Dr. Diane exposed before quickly ushering him home upon realizing his newfound ability. The following day, the scheduled surgery for the young girl approaches. Despite James's persistent pleas, the primary doctor remains obstinate in his incorrect diagnosis. Faced with the stakes of the girl's life, James resorts to drastic measures, injuring the doctor's hand just before the operation. With the doctor incapacitated, James assumes control of the procedure, successfully removing the tumor and saving the girl's life, albeit at the expense of his own reputation. Despite the surgery's success, the disgruntled doctor accuses James of malpractice. Undeterred, James seeks out Dr. Sam for a routine eye checkup the next day. To Sam's alarm, he observes that James can now only perceive bones, muscles, and nerves in people, rapidly losing his ability to see as a normal human would. It transpires that James has been continuously using the eye drop since his last application, unknowingly diminishing his vision with each use. Sam's urgent pleas fall on deaf ears as James remains fixated on his experiment, disregarding his own well-being in pursuit of unprecedented discoveries. With each continued use of the eye drop, James believes he edges closer to seeing beyond the limits of human perception. Concerned for his friend's deteriorating health, Sam attempts to forcibly sedate him. In the ensuing struggle, a tragic accident occurs. James unintentionally pushes Sam out of a window, resulting in his death. Consumed by remorse, James grapples with the irreversible consequences of his actions. Witnessing the tragedy, Dr. Diane resolves to protect James from legal repercussions. She aids his escape before the authorities arrive, preventing him from facing charges for Sam's accidental death. However, James's life takes a drastic turn as news of the killer doctor spreads throughout the town. No longer able to lead a normal life or practice medicine, James adopts a new identity and appearance, finding refuge as an attraction in a freak show. In his new role, James utilizes his extraordinary ability to entertain audiences by guessing the contents of their pockets, earning a livelihood in the process. Yet, beneath the surface, he harbors a deep sense of sadness and disillusionment. What once held the promise of saving countless lives has now reduced him to a mere spectacle. Despite attempts by Crane, the owner of the freak show, to uncover his secret, James remains elusive, unable to escape the tragic fate that has befallen him. As fate would have it, a woman sustains an injury near their set, prompting James to swiftly assess her condition. Utilizing his unique ability, he diagnoses her broken leg and provides assistance until paramedics arrive. Impressed by James's adept handling of the situation, Crane begins to suspect his true profession and proposes a lucrative business venture. He suggests establishing a diagnosis clinic where individuals can seek insight into their health concerns before consulting a traditional doctor. James is intrigued by the idea, seeing it as an opportunity to utilize his power for altruistic purposes. The following day, they return to their former city and settle into a modest apartment. Before retiring for the night, James adheres to his routine, applying the eye drops that have become an integral part of his life since his initial experiment with Dr. Sam. With each drop, he gains further insight into his surroundings, even penetrating the ceiling above him. To conceal the effects of the drops from prying eyes, James dons black glasses. Moments later, Crane introduces their first client, an elderly affluent woman plagued by severe health issues. As the elderly woman expresses concern over the possibility of cancer, James quickly discerns that her symptoms stem from fatigue due to old age rather than a serious illness. Assuring her that rest will alleviate her discomfort, he provides reassurance before she departs. Later that day, James retreats to his room to document the progress of their venture. His solitude is interrupted by Crane, who urgently summons him outside. James emerges to find a throng of people eagerly awaiting his diagnosis, drawn by the glowing endorsement of the elderly woman from the previous day. Word of his diagnostic prowess spreads rapidly among her affluent acquaintances, catapulting their clinic to newfound fame. Throughout the day, James tends to the ailments of the eager patients, while Crane capitalizes on the opportunity, collecting payments. With each successful diagnosis, their reputation grows. One day, Dr. Diane catches wind of the clinic's existence and hastens to meet the purported miracle doctor, recognizing James immediately upon their encounter. However, James, now consumed by his altered perception, fails to recognize her and can only discern her muscles. It's only when Dr. Diane speaks that memories of his past life come rushing back to James, briefly piercing through the veil of his altered reality. Dr. Diane confides in James, revealing that she became suspicious after numerous patients arrived at her clinic already aware of their ailments, eventually piecing together his return. For the first time in months, James finds solace in sharing his feelings with someone. He confides in Dr. Diane about his struggles, admitting that the eye drops have become a curse, tormenting him even in his sleep as he finds himself unable to shut out the constant stream of vision behind his eyelids. Despite recognizing the toll it's taking on his health and the mounting danger of his increasing notoriety, James feels trapped, unable to cease using the drops. Expressing concern for his well-being and the looming threat of police attention, Dr. Diane implores James to seek safety. However, Crane, driven by his desire for profit, opposes the idea, unwilling to relinquish the lucrative business built on James's talent. As tensions escalate, James and Dr. Diane confront Crane, fleeing the town together in search of refuge. Desperate to regain control over his vision, James seeks to fund further experiments. They arrive in Las Vegas, where James's unique ability proves advantageous in the realm of poker. By the night's end, he amasses enough money to sustain them for a month. However, their triumph is short-lived as the casino's manager and a policeman accuse James of cheating, deeming his winnings impossible in a single night. As James attempts to defend himself, the policeman forcibly removes his glasses, exposing his eyes, which have undergone a remarkable change in color. Caught off guard by the sudden revelation, the policeman swiftly identifies James as the fugitive doctor responsible for his friend's death. As backup is summoned, James instinctively flees in a car, pursued by the authorities in a helicopter. In his frantic attempt to escape, he loses control of the vehicle and crashes. Miraculously, James emerges from the wreckage unscathed. Disoriented and on foot, James stumbles upon an open church resonating with hymns of faith. As he enters, his eyes gradually revert to their original state. The comforting words of the Father offer solace, yet James feels irredeemably lost. Gazing skyward, he perceives a divine presence, though he knows he is beyond salvation. Dr. Diane arrives with the police, but instead of arresting him, they offer a moment of reprieve. Consumed by remorse, James takes a final, decisive action. With a heavy heart, he gauges both of his eyes, choosing to relinquish the burden of his curse. As the screen fades to black, James turns to the camera, his eyes now gone, a poignant conclusion to his tumultuous journey. The movie concludes with a message inviting viewers to subscribe for more content, reinforcing the impact of James's harrowing tale and inviting further engagement with the channel.